let us start with the Chicago train attack. It happened this Monday on November 17, and it was horrifying. And it woke up several memories. It brought several connotations to our minds with a hit of Irina Zarutska by the Carlos Brown Jr. So look at what we have here. We have this man who is a career criminal, 50 years old, who was also prosecuted 50 times and released 49.
So he was never rehabilitated, nor did
he
it's grow out.
One of those success stories that we constantly hear about.
Yeah.
And he's accused of setting a woman on fire on a Chicago train. Right. It isn't just a man or just a woman, right? You kind of understand the pattern. There comes a threshold that once crossed, we are beginning to talk about, we are talking about patterns instead of isolated incidents, and we've already crossed that years ago. So he's accused of setting a woman on fire in a Chicago train this week. He's federally charged with committing a terrorist attack. He's 50 years old. His name is Lawrence Reed. He was identified as the suspect in the attack on a Chicago Transit Authority train in the city's Loop District. He was arrested the next day and federally charged the day after that, which was November 19. That was last Wednesday, 2 days ago. And he was charged with committing a terrorist act or other violence against a mass transportation system. The victim was an unidentified 26-year-old woman who remains in critical conditions, and she hasn't been named, and we don't know yet whether she's alive or not. I hope she's alive. According to the articles I'm reading, she's in severe critical condition, but I haven't yet read that she's not yet alive. I hope she is. So there may be some light at the end of the tunnel that she hasn't lost her life, hopefully. Right, but all of the rest, it's, again, the same thing. We constantly talk about it. We see it all the time. It shows a remarkable lack of success by the system, by the rehabilitation system, but also at the system of adjudication, the judiciary system that is full of activist judges who stop thinking about the common good, but only think about promoting their personal agenda, which happens to be the woke agenda. And they think that instead of having civil society as the main engine of social life and social progress, they want a state that is going to be the referee for their preferred race relations and their preferred distribution of wealth, which constantly implies, let us extract resources from this group and give it to our voters. Right, so the attack was unprovoked and horrific, as the police says. She was literally standing there. He started pouring gas on her. He tried to light her on fire. She fought back. She started running. And then he lit up a can of gasoline that he had. He started chasing her. At some point, he threw that to her. She was wrapped around in flames. She started rolling around to save herself, but it didn't happen. She exited the train. And luckily, she was found, and she is being hospitalized.
What's the excuse for this one?
There's literally no excuse.
What is the excuse for this one? I mean, he's been let out 49 times.
Yeah.
So there is going to be an excuse for this one. You mentioned Irina Zarutska and her killer, which I will mention briefly in the next segment. The excuse for him why you can't just execute him is that, well, he's insane. He's literally insane and has no impulse control. Therefore, it would be injustice of some kind not to kill him. Oh yeah, I've got mention of this.
Yeah.
So like, there's an excuse. These extenuating circumstances, which actually are exacerbating the fact that he's so insane that he doesn't know not to murder people, is why we can't remove him permanently from society. Also, I think it's just a bit of a Hail Mary BS argument because, well, in that case, if he was just insane and wanted to attack anybody and everybody, why did he only limit it to the tiny defenseless white girl who was sat directly in front of him and then go on about, I got that white girl? Why didn't he then continue to attack all of the much larger black people around him? The argument makes no sense. It's an obvious excuse. So what's the excuse for this guy? Why he's going to be taken into court again and presumably let off again?
Well, a day after the event, which happened on the 17th of November, there was an article published by Sally Sato on the Free Press, and its title is Irina Zarutska's Killer Does Not Deserve to Die, the Execution of the Schizophrenic Man, again, mental illness, who stabbed a Ukrainian refugee on a train would be an act of cruelty, not justice.
Cruelty to who? By what definition of justice? What about the good in the world?
Yes. I've never understood the mental health thing. Like, he still did it. Like, temporary insanity is even stranger because it's saying, well, that it wasn't you. It's quite strange that maybe there's an argument for that, but we sort of believe what is it? It's sort of it's a spiritual metaphysical belief. It's sort of saying that wasn't you for a moment, so what is actually you? But we just treat that like it's completely normal. You can be temporarily insane, strangle your wife and then go, oh, it's temporarily insane. It's like, what does that actually mean? You still did it. It's very strange, and particularly with these people, it's like he's mentally ill and dangerous. So asylum or death penalty.
Well, it's based on like the sadly now quite outdated ideas of intentionality, with being a factor in sentencing, which is if you intended to do something negative, that makes it worse than if it was just an accident, which is still applicable in many situations. Not really in this situation, because intentionality doesn't come into it. They're saying, well, he didn't intend to because he's crazy, therefore he didn't realize what he's doing, so that's a mitigating factor. No, that makes it worse.
I have a slightly different view. I think mens rea is important, the criminal intent, but here we are constantly
it's
talking.
applicable with lots of stuff.
Here we're talking about people who deliberately did so and did so remorselessly, and come up the next day, as this guy Lawrence Reed came up to it says burn, bitch. That's the profanity he used. He was completely remorseless and started singing to the judge, right? So I think that here we are talking about people who are deliberately doing it. And back to your point, Nick, about what mental illness and why are they doing it? I think it's a different thing. When it comes to mental illness, I know people who have mental illness. They haven't tried to kill me and they haven't tried to set me on fire. Right? Let's get it out in the open. Maybe that's too radical or revolutionary a view in psychology for some people on the BBC and the CNN, but it's true.
They know that you're a black belt. They wouldn't dare try it. They're mentally ill, but they're not that crazy.
Don't you dare. Right. I think it has to do with the narratival attempt to control people's beliefs and try to gaslight people into thinking that when it comes to patterns from their side, from their preferred groups, they're going to isolate incidents, isolate the blame, and try to demonize people for focusing on that pattern. Meanwhile, the merest criticism of the agenda of the left is portrayed as an epidemic of far-right extremism. So they are doing this double standards. They're saying, well, the minor incident on the other side is going to be treated as an indication of a larger epidemic, a pattern, a really bad pattern. But when it comes to crimes committed by members of groups that the left considers oppressed, there are always isolated incidents, mental health, knives with mental illness, cars with mental illness, always not a pattern, according to the...
But then you get into the higher propensity for schizophrenia amongst certain groups, and that's when you really get, like with the other train incident we had in this country, and people said, oh, see, it's not immigration. And then some people were like, well, it is in the sense that the second generation Caribbeans have a massive propensity for schizophrenia. First generation as well, but even more second generation. So then you have to get into those stats if you want a really uncomfortable conversation.
Have we considered that he may be a marijuana addict?
Well, that's semantics.
Have we taken that into account? I think if you were to examine this man's background, you would find a whole raft of drug abuse incidents.
I can't.
Just
condone
tell us you
this.
like weed.
I can't. It's a clear attack on Mr. Hitchens. I can't condone it because he's my hero. But perhaps
I thought he's your dad.
a bit too into the marijuana explanation at times.
Well, especially because he always points to it because, it can cause schizophrenia. Yeah, well, what if the people smoking it are already more prone to schizophrenia?
Well, then it's even worse.
Then I'm even more right.
So we see now that we are faced with a culture of impunity when it comes to groups that are affiliated with the left, and the left considers them to be oppressed. They can never fail to integrate, and they can never be responsible for their failure to integrate into wider society. To the extent that they don't, it's always the problem of their ideological opponents. It's always the problem of the Western man, the straight white male, who who occupies the top of the pyramid of oppression in the oppressed pyramid scheme of intentionality, the oppression calculus. Right, so here, for this person, we have approached the point where after 50 crimes, 9 or 10 of which are felonies, and most of them are violent, we're discussing about the maximum penalty of life in prison. Federal court records do not show whether Reed has an attorney representing him in the federal case. Chicago outlets reported that Reed was disruptive during his first appearance in the federal court, including yelling over the judge that he wanted to represent himself and claiming that he was a Chinese citizen. No,
so
he was not a Chinese
either making
citizen.
a play for insanity plea,
Yeah.
or he is actually crazy. In either case, that is not mitigating.
Yeah.
That is exacerbating. That makes it worse. If he is incapable, if he is too low IQ, that's always an excuse they like to trot out. He's too incompetent to stand trial because he's too low IQ or something. Then that's worse. You don't throw them back out onto the streets where they can cause more people harm. You institutionalize them for life, or you execute them.
It's funny how every time we constantly hear about social commentary and social explanation and the assumptions that the woke are using in order to talk about it, they're talking about past injustices. But somehow past injustices committed by a particular individual of a group that the left considers to be oppressed don't matter. 49 times that he committed a crime before, they don't matter. They didn't matter for the judge. All of it is going to be treated as an atomic, isolated incident.
Well, on that same kind of subject of the narratives, it's also funny how IQ either doesn't matter, has no effect, or isn't real until it can be used as an excuse to get black criminals out of prison.
And we were talking about decades ago, there were some arguments saying that the death penalty is bad because you can never know, because of the DNA tests that came out and they proved that lots of people who were...
Yeah, because the Innocent Project likes to commit a lot of fraud with DNA tests.
What happens when you have someone here in this picture who is... I'm not going to focus more on it, but what happens when you have evidence that these people are literally trying to set someone on fire? It's there on camera. And also, we have this picture here where he has set this on fire and he is trying to get to the victim. Meanwhile, people stand around him and do nothing. Right. On the one hand, I do get it. I do get that people are afraid, and sometimes some people freeze in such situations. And but on the other hand, how's that supposed to go on? It looks like there should be some criticism here. She wasn't the only person on the train. The others just sat and did nothing. And he has lit this can of gasoline here, and it's lit, and he is trying to get to her way. And then we have footage of her being wrapped on fire, running on the station's platform.
Let's call it what it is. I'll dub it the Penny effect. Daniel Penny was a hero. He saved a lot of people that day. Yeah, the guy that he ended up choking out hadn't done anything yet, but I'm sorry, he would have done something like this if Penny hadn't stepped in. And what happened to him? He had his name dragged through the mud, his face plastered all over the media, and he had to go to court and almost could have been sent to prison over it, right? This is the intended effect of that kind of action.
And it's not just that, it's also all other incidents that are happening at the moment in the context of politics that is becoming, to a very large extent, democratic socialist in some places. And we have people who are pushing for activist judges and activists in all the areas of the state. I'm talking about Mamdani. He came forward, he was voted as mayor of New York with his agenda. It's all the woke agenda. Cry, 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 oppressed, oppressed, oppressed. Let's take down the oppressors. And there were lots of women in particular who were taking screenshots of themselves, selfies, and saying, I voted for Mamdani. And then you have all the other videos that come from NYC subway, train station. There, you have lots of people just being bullying women. And there was one that came a few days ago. I didn't know that the conversation was going to go that way, and I didn't include it. And there was someone who was screaming at a lady, and he impersonated shooting her head. And just, no, you shouldn't be proud for voting people who are deliberately trying to obfuscate what is going on and are usually giving the bleeding heart nonsense instead of being for actual law and order and against impunity. And when people make excuses for impunity, they're grifters at best. You can do the math for the worst case. Here we have Lawrence Reed. Look at the mag shot. Just, I think if people walk and look at someone looking like that, they're allowed to say, this guy looks suspicious. I want to keep my distance. And it would have been good for her if she had kept her distance. But she was sat there and he just poured gasoline on her. Right. Here we have him. He started screaming, burn, burn alive, burn alive. Obscenities. CTA surveillance footage shows Reed walking up behind the woman with no interaction at all, removing the cap from a bottle and pouring gasoline over her head and body. As she tried to fight him off, he lit the liquid and set her on fire, then calmly walked away while she burned. 5 years ago, Reed set Thompson Center on fire because he claimed he hadn't received his social security check. He pleaded guilty to arson and was given 2 years of mental health probation by Judge Arthur Hill.
Mental health probation?
Yeah. Just when
trying to set someone on fire.
When you look at footage like this, you don't go and say, well, there may be cases of spontaneous combustion, right? He did it. Right. Let's move forward and talk about the other attacks. Here he had another case. In August, he attacked someone at a mental ward, and he attacked that person very violently. But there was a judge who was very partial to his case. She helped him a lot. Let's look at this judge, Molina Gonzalez. She gave him a very light sentence, let's say. Let's see what happened here.
I wonder why.
Yeah. I typed her name.
Hispanic Heritage Month? Oh, wow.
To celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, we're recognizing diverse voices in the judiciary. The following features Cook County Circuit Judge Teresa Molina Gonzalez and her thoughts on her career, diversity on the bench, and more. And they're asking her, what inspired you to pursue law and eventually become a judge? Who has been the biggest influence in your life and or career?
Did you see the answer? She says, I liked criminal justice because I found it way less confusing than most subjects.
Oh, no.
So it's like, I'm stupid. I couldn't do this.
I'm stupid, which is why they made me a judge. Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, my
I was always interested in things being fair and felt that people should be held accountable for their actions, clearly. I knew many people that were the victims of crimes and wanted to be a voice for those who needed to be heard. I went to law school with the intention of becoming a prosecutor and ultimately moved to Chicago to start my career. After nearly 18 years of working as a prosecutor, I wanted to have the opportunity to serve in a larger capacity. I wanted to be able to help more people. Having had the opportunity to appear before many judges throughout my career, I knew that being a judge would allow me to have a greater impact on my community.
Well, she achieved that.
I'm extremely grateful. I don't know if the community is extremely grateful to you, and humbled to be given the opportunity to serve as a judge. So, they're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with that judge. That judge claims to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month as well. Again, woke stuff, representation of this or that group. Where's the common good here? Where does the common good enter the picture? Instead of having the state being the overseer and the referee of preferred racial relations and outcomes of racial relations. Nowhere. Meanwhile, the common good is not promoted. Society is disintegrating into a jungle, and infrastructure is collapsing, and people are not safe anymore to take the subway. And all the woke stuff, spare us with a BS, all the past discrimination and past, what should I say, historical injustices that you're constantly talking about. Where did you see them in his case? He committed so many felonies, he burned so many things, he tried to burn someone alive right now. What does he have to do in order for someone like this judge and any other activist judge to understand that, well, sometimes some people can't be integrated into society?
She's talking about having these strong Latina women in my life as role models. It's like, this sounds like,
yeah.
What is this? It sounds like you're a tweet or something. This is meant to be like a judge, like with serious profiles. Strong Latina women. Go on.
I was just going to ask where's Dad?
Interesting question.
Why isn't the dad your hero?
Good question.
Well, and let me just say this, because ultimately what happens is that wokeness rests on utopianism and utopian idealism. They're trying to create the image that life has no tragic element in it, and this is absolutely mistaken. And what happens is that they're isolating things, and they're saying, right, we're looking only at the relationship between the state and the criminal, and if the criminal is a member of the groups we are considering oppressed, we're going to basically allow them to get away with it, and if not, the sentence isn't going to be particularly strong. But no, life does have a tragic element. We can't have everyone happy, and in this case, you're either going to have career criminals happy, or you're going to have the greater public happy, and people who care about public safety. Because when you're talking about this lady here, Sally Sattel, who writes, the execution of the schizophrenic man who stabbed a Ukrainian refugee, murdered is the right word, on a train would be an act of cruelty, not justice. Well, what about his act of cruelty? What about the message that people are getting from this generalized impunity?
Yeah, it's also a total lack of confidence in our own ability to mete out justice, right? And to decide what is just and to act on it. Because we don't think, the West in general thinks it has no right to make these moral judgments. So it has no right to execute someone. That's part of it. As well as just hating white people, plus all the stuff you said.
Well, we absolutely do have the moral authority to do so. And I would argue to all of those people who say that we used to oppress them when we got to their countries and before we did anything, this kind of behaviour is why they think we oppress them. Because we got there and we're like, no, you don't do that.
Can you stop setting people on fire, please?
Yeah, can you stop setting people on fire?
Let me be free, bro.
Yeah. This is just what we do here, man. Yeah. That's just what we do.
Cultural relativism.
And there were people within those communities who also said, yeah, I also don't want to be set on fire. And they were called Uncle Toms and collaborators and such, whereas they were just normal, sensible people who don't like living in chaos.
Well, whatever the history here, there comes a point where in order to have society say, right, whatever conflict has been in the past must be reconciled, and you need to be a member of society. And if you're not a member of society and you're bringing war to society, society has to wage war against you instead of making constant excuses for you.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.